No audio. How about that? Does that help? Does that help? Hello. Check, 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 check. Can you hear me? Let's see if this is now coming through. I want to make sure that you can hear something. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Let's make sure that we have our microphone here. Check 1, 2. Looks like it's all good now. Okay, excellent. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Dome at Home. It sure sounded good the first time. You're going to have to get my second take now. We're on location. We're not in the regular Dome at Home studio where everything is set up and still things manage to go wrong. Here we are out in the field, literally in the middle of a field, so that we can bring you the live lunar eclipse after the show. So it's a double feature tonight. We've got the Dome at Home show. We'll be looking at the Milky Way. We'll be looking at some of your pictures. We'll be looking at cool space stuff, all the usual stuff. That'll run till about 8. We'll take a few-minute break just to do some gear configuration here. The moon rises about 8:20 p.m. and the lunar eclipse begins shortly after that. Now, lunar eclipses are very cool, but they take a long time. It's not like a short event. So we'll be here literally all night and into the morning hours to see the whole thing. If you're not going to watch the whole thing, the peak maximum eclipse is about 11:12 p.m. Central Time. The hour before that and the hour after that are kind of good, interesting times if you want to watch one or the other. They're kind of a mirror image of each other, so you don't really have to watch the whole thing unless you want to. And the early parts, there'll be a lot of time for questions and a very slow, subtle build-up of the eclipse, which is kind of a cool thing. Let me see. Okay, what else did I say? I wanted to share with you a little bit about the behind-the-scenes magic here. So I write the concepts for the shows each month at the beginning of the year. So I wrote this one back in January saying, oh yeah, well the Milky Way is up, we're going to talk about that, and we knew that Josh Kutryk was going to be going into space, and so we knew we'd talk about that around this time. We didn't know it would be like just before his mission, but it worked out. But somehow I didn't notice that the eclipse was the same night. And so I've got a whole show of non-eclipse content and then the eclipse. So anyway, that's kind of why we're doing it the way we're doing it here. Okay, we are in the field, and so we don't have the usual green screen and stuff like that. So I'll probably turn my camera off after a little while. Nice to see so many of you checking in and saying hello. Oh, there we go. Oh, hey, Paul from way out on the East Coast. Great. And the Forest family, always a pleasure to see you guys. Yeah, your theme song is still going strong. Hey Stan, nice to see you. James and Dale. Oh, Margaret. Okay. Thank you all for checking in and telling me that the audio is not working. That's great. And just great to see you as well. Okay, here we go. So, we are going to... and hi James, nice to see you. James is standing about 5 meters that way. So it's really easy for me to... I'm glad he's texting me. Hey Janet, nice to see you. Okay, so we're still here on Treaty 1 territory, and we're talking about the sky, astronomy, space, and stuff like that. If you're new to the show, we love it when you check in and say, hey, I'm watching from wherever you happen to be watching from. It lets us tell our bosses that we're getting reach and stuff like that. Now James is walking in front of me and waving, and now he's doing a little dance. And yeah, okay, so check in the chat if you can. Otherwise, we'll get on with the show here. Last month, we had Gia Walker talk to us about the Milky Way photographs that she takes with all the great landscape foregrounds and stuff like that. And we saw some of Alan Dyer's amazing images of noctilucent clouds the month before that. And it's really been a great summer for imaging, and I see a number of people have really gotten into taking images. I did not get all of the images that were submitted this month into the show because we're doing all the other stuff for the eclipse as well. It's not that you didn't make the cut, it's literally that I ran out of time to put all of them in. So the ones that did not make it into today's show will make it into next month's show. And if you sent me images and you don't see them tonight, just send me an email and remind me, but we'll definitely get in. I know there were a number of things that came in that were just great images, but I only had so much time before today. Let's kick off right away. Ulrika was out vacationing this summer, and you remember her binocular challenge feature that shows up throughout the show. She's also been taking great pictures of the moon. Here's the moon rising over Sulphur Mountain. Here you have it, where it's first quarter moon just right over the horizon. The next picture is my favorite, though, of the two of them, just because it really resolves the whole thing of the moon, and it's still got a little bit of that foreground in there. There's still the tips of the trees there that remind you that you're looking at this thing from 380,000 kilometers away from another planet. Great shot, Ulrika, and thanks for sending that in. And here we are, I guess, half a moon or a quarter of a moon orbit later. It's full moon tonight, and we'll be having that lunar eclipse. Let's see. Keeping with the moon, Ivan Yun is a member of the local astronomy club, Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Winnipeg Centre, and I got to know him. I think it was a year and a half, maybe something like that. And he's just a top-notch imager. He does these amazing images of the sun with this great telescope that he's got, and recently he did some shots of the moon. Now normally when you take a picture of the moon, you put your camera on and you take a picture of it and that's it. Well, you only get so much detail that way because your telescope is sort of not magnifying very much. Well, Ivan decided to magnify so that he couldn't see the whole moon in one shot. Each picture is actually a little segment of this image, and then he put all those pictures together in a mosaic. So this is actually 8 panels of high-resolution image of the moon. And when you look at it full screen, it really is spectacular. I hope it makes it through all the video compression out to you there. But when you see an image this size and it's crisp, that's cool. But it's something that is achievable with a moderate amount of work. But you can zoom in on this thing almost as much as you want, and it's still just crisp and clear. I know he's posted it on the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada's Facebook page. If you can go and look at it there on a big screen and zoom in and move around, it's like you're flying over the moon. Great image, Ivan. This is spectacular. This is one of the best moon mosaics I've seen. Just so crisp and clear. I love it. Let's see. Gia was out for the Perseid meteor shower, and this is what you call a composite image. Not all those meteors fell on the same snap of the frame, obviously, but you can stitch the images together to sort of put them all there. You can see that they're all sort of coming from off-screen up near the top. That's where the radiant of the shower is. But there's a couple of them that are at different angles and things like that. And there's also a few satellites in here. The ones that look like they don't fade in or out, those are satellites. The ones that are they start thin and then get thicker, and there's some structure to them, those are the ones that are the meteors. Great shot, and you got the aurora there in the background, and of course your famous lake and foreground there. Beautiful shot, Gia. Thanks for sending this in. I tried making a composite. You're not going to see that in the show today because it's actually a heck of a lot of work. All right, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, okay, you will see a composite here. This is, I streamed the show, and so rather than taking pictures, I did them for video, and so I really didn't get a lot of great pictures I could put together, but I got a few bright ones. And here's Perseus right in the middle, so they're all radiating away from Perseus, so that was good enough for me. I thought I took that out. James has taken some great shots. He sent in a few pictures from the last couple of months of effort here, and taken a page from Gia's playbook there, I think, with the nice foreground, the lake, the reflection, and of course the Milky Way off in the background. And you can see just the great dust lanes and all the little clusters of stars and nebula and stuff like that in there. Beautiful shot. And I think there's another one here that's sort of, It must be later in the shot here. Here's a Geo one from the Glenlee Observatory, with the observatory in the front there and the Milky Way behind it. That's pretty cool. It's amazing how different the pictures look based on that foreground. I mean, it's the same Milky Way. Everybody that takes a picture of the Milky Way, it's going to look the same essentially in some way, but the artistry really comes through in that composition. Love it. Let's see here. Here's another Milky Way one from James. And Scorpio over here on the right. This is the bright star Antares. And the tail of Scorpio goes down below the horizon. His claws are up here. I didn't have time to do the little lines that I like to do, but I'll do that for you later, James. And M6, the little star cluster that is the binocular challenge for last month, is right in about there. So really low on the horizon now, but the Milky Way stretching out all along there. Very cool. And here is James's attempt to prove that the Earth does in fact spin. There's the star trails. The stars are not moving around us, but as the Earth rotates, as you take a picture, they move along and give these beautiful star trails with Polaris, the North Star, or Keewatin, the going home star, right there in the center, and all of the stars going around. And beautiful. I'll have to ask you where that foreground is. That doesn't look like a Manitoba kind of thing, but maybe it is. I don't know. Very cool. And you can't get by without a little bit of aurora. Very nice. And again, the foreground, the trees and so on. I took a lot of shots of the aurora when I was up in Churchill, and the one thing that I didn't do, well, because it was right overhead, you couldn't really get the ground effect. But it was it adds a lot to the shot with all of this stuff in the foreground, for sure. Beautiful, beautiful work, James. Nice job. Thanks for sending these in. Rihanna, you also sent us a bunch of images. You've been doing all sorts of stuff with your various smart scopes. I think you've got a sea star and a dwarf and maybe another one too. I did not keep track of which telescope made which of these pictures, but I just grabbed a selection of the ones that you did. The Crescent Nebula, one of my favorites. It's up in the Northern Cross, and it's a great nebula to sort of target because it's relatively small and self-contained, and you did a great job of capturing it there. That's awesome. And then globular clusters, these star clusters, we're going to talk a little bit about them when we talk about the Milky Way. But they're beautiful objects to look at. Hundreds of thousands of stars all packed together in a ball. And then the Whirlpool Galaxy. Oops, and I see there's a typo there. That should read M51, not M57. M51 is sort of the quintessential galaxy you have to take a picture of, and some great detail in this image, Rihanna. It's not just, it's a deep image. I know it's a number of hours of exposures, but also the processing. You really brought out the detail without sort of blurring things too much. There's sometimes a tendency for things to get over processed, and you can't really, you just wind up getting more noise, but this is beautiful. Nice job. And one more. I'm not sure how this is going to come through the compression of the video. This is the Elephant Trunk Nebula, and I know this is also a really long exposure. This is a challenging object to get with, you know, the old school traditional astrophotography rigs where you have like a big telescope and a super expensive mount and all that kind of stuff. And so to be able to get an image like this with a smart scope just really shows how far the technology has come to be able to do that. It's still a heck of a lot of work, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's easy, but it's really become accessible. Some of these things that used to be challenges are now becoming sort of the intermediate level, and things that were impossible have become the challenges for today's amateur imagers. And that's just going to continue as these smart scopes get a little bit more powerful and a little bit more exciting. Let's see if we have any more pictures here. Oh, we do not. So, before we go on a little bit, thank you all to everybody that sent in all of the images, and you can always send us the various images that you want to show off. We're happy to show them to. You can send them to space@manitobamuseum.ca. Or you can reach us through any of the places you happen to be watching the show, either the Manitoba Museum social media or my Scott the Skywatcher page, which leads right to me as well. All right. Let me see. Okay, let's just make sure that you can all hear me still. Oh, and I see that James dropped something in the quarry there. The Star Trail, the Stony Mountain. Oh, Stony Mountain. Okay, the quarry there. Great, great. Okay, that makes sense. Hey, Hollis. Nice to see you. Hollis from Connecticut, longtime viewer of the show. Yeah, it's one of those times, you know. I mean, between Canada and America, there's stuff going on, but that doesn't affect us. The great thing that I love about astronomy is that, you know, the sky, the stars belong to everybody. We all look at the same sky. Every human that's ever lived has lived under the same, essentially the same view of the sky, the same universe, and it's a great reminder of, you know, the similarities rather than the differences. So nothing to be embarrassed about on your part, and spend some time under the stars, and it makes things seem a whole lot better. And hello from, hey Kim, nice to see you as well. Kim's out in Kingston. Kim and Kevin will be getting ready for the lunar eclipse as well. Are you guys streaming, or are you just going to be photographing, or are you doing a public thing? The thing about a lunar eclipse, we normally don't do public events for lunar eclipses because they are like 5 or 6 hours long, and they're the kind of thing that you can see with your eye. You don't need any special equipment. There's no kind of safety risk or anything like that, so we tend not to do a special public event for them. But you know, it's definitely something that's fun to do. All right, I'm going to set our time here. This is the sky at moonrise, but we're going to go a little darker so that we can see the sky a little bit more. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Milky Way. We talked a little bit about this last month, and I guess most of our summer kind of months, but it's really the sort of last chance to see this central core area of the Milky Way, the area around Sagittarius, the teapot over here, and Scorpio. This is the area that we saw in James and Gia's Milky Way shots. And you can see all these labeled objects here. All these little green squares are nebula, and the little orange, yellow circles are star clusters, and things like that. The little things with crosses in them, those are star clusters as well. Those are globular star clusters. M12 that Rihanna shot is right over here, up in Ophiuchus. What a fun constellation name. And there's a bunch of them in and around there. In fact, this is globular cluster central, basically. The globular clusters are one of the ways that we kind of figured out what our Milky Way actually looks like. I mean, we look at it, it's a band in the sky, and it's sort of, if we zoom out here, let's make it a little darker so we can see the Milky Way a little better, and let's turn off some of these labels. This is all with our favorite star program, Stellarium, of course. This is free software that you can use. Here, we'll turn off some of these labels. There we go. So the Milky Way sort of stretches across the sky in a band that goes all the way across the sky to the other side. And actually, if we could just remove the ground, which we can, the Milky Way actually continues all the way around the sky and back again. So the Milky Way is like a ring all the way around us, and it's basically a ring of stars. If you look at it in binoculars or a telescope, you can actually see that it is made of stars. Each star is too faint for us to see with our eyes, but the cumulative light adds up to this glow that we see and call the Milky Way. So that tells us something profound about what our universe looks like. It tells us that stars are not in all directions equally. There are more stars in this band and fewer stars in these other directions. Like, for example, off in the evening tonight, off in the west and the northwest, you'll see the Big Dipper, and you'll see the bright star Arcturus, and some of those constellations, the spring constellations that we'll talked about. And it looks like I just unplugged my monitor, so we'll just plug that back in. There we go. But that part of the sky doesn't have nearly as many stars. So this tells us that the stars are not uniform. And in fact, if you sort of went about this scientifically and measured how many stars there are in every direction, the stars around us are arranged basically in a disk. It's like a flat pizza. And the pizza is made of stars, maybe 400 billion of them. And one of them is the sun. And so we live in this disk of stars. Now, by looking at the Milky Way and by looking at the placement of those other things, the star clusters, the globular clusters and things like that, we actually can tell we're not in the center of that disk. We're off to one side. In fact, we're closer to the edge than we are towards the center. The center of the galaxy is down towards Sagittarius. The center of the galaxy is right in about here. And as you go out this way, you're actually going farther towards the edge of the galaxy, and out in the other direction, we're basically looking out towards, Perseus and in that area. That's where we're looking sort of away from the center out into the sticks, essentially. And when we look away from the plane of the galaxy, when we're looking at this area, there's only the stars between us and the edge of the galaxy. And by figuring out, how many stars there are, we can figure out how thick the galaxy is. It's only a couple of thousand light years wide, and it's 130,000 light years across. So it's pretty thin for its size. All of this is basically just from observing the stars, and while it's not something that the average person probably thinks about much, if you start to look at the sky and you start to look at the objects and using a critical eye, you can get the sense that this galaxy is all around us and we're inside it. We've never sent a probe far enough away to take a picture of this, to look back on us and see the galaxy, and yet we know what it looks like pretty well, which is kind of amazing, actually. Now, let's see here. We've got the sky set here for about 10 o'clock, 20 after 10. It started to get dark. We've got the summer triangle nice and high. All of these other constellations, the Scorpio and Sagittarius, are setting. Over in the east, we have a couple of things happening. First of all, we have Saturn rising. For about 10:30 is when it'll get up above the things. If we have the chance during the eclipse, we'll point a different telescope at there we go. We'll point a different telescope at Saturn and see if we can show you Saturn's rings. It's a pretty nice sight. But of course, that rises just as the eclipse is going to be sort of getting into some of its more interesting stages. So we'll have to see what we can do about that. There are quite a few objects to look at with your binoculars in this area as well. We'll talk about those during the next show, the show at the end of September, when we look at the fall constellations and the galaxies of the fall sky and things like that. Something that we didn't look at was over in the northwest just before sunset. So I'm going to rewind the sky here. Sorry for jumping around a little bit, but want to make sure that you get a chance to see all of the things that are available. I'm going to just change our landscape here because for some reason this particular image has a tree exactly where I want to show you what's going on. Just as the sun goes down, and we're really starting to get low, but just as soon as, before it's dark, before you can see any stars, there's a brilliant light over in the south, the west-southwest. That's the planet Venus, and you'll probably see it for another few weeks or so, but it is getting lower and lower each night. So we've got a couple of planets that you can see easily before midnight. You've got Venus right after the sunset off in the west, but it will set very soon after the sun, and then you got to wait a few hours and look over towards the east to start to see Saturn coming up. Let me see here. Now if we go to moonrise time, and we're not going to show the whole thing, but the moon rises here in Manitoba. Actually, now I have to switch back to the other horizon view because this one has a hill exactly where I want to show you something. I need to just make my own that doesn't have hills or trees. There we go. 20 after 8, the moon will begin to rise. And we're just going to zoom in here, get a good view. And I've got some labels on it. That'll be useful later when we're looking at the eclipse. But as it's rising, first of all, the moon looks big. It often looks orange or yellow colored. That's just the atmospheric effect because it's just rising. But as the moon rises, and we'll just lock in here, basically the eclipse begins. And the eclipse starts where the moon starts to move into the shadow of the Earth. And the shadow of the Earth is not a hard shadow. The Earth's atmosphere sort of blurs it out a little bit, and so it's kind of got like a fade-in period called the penumbral eclipse. That lasts for an hour or so. Then you get what's called the partial phase, where the moon starts going into the deepest part of the Earth's shadow. There we go. There's the Earth's shadow starting to creep on for the partial phase of the eclipse. Now, if the moon was going all the way into the Earth's shadow, it would completely go red, and that's what they call the blood moon sometimes. That's a total lunar eclipse. We're actually not quite total this particular eclipse because the moon is just slightly out of orientation from that central kind of passage through the shadow. And so what happens is by about, I think it's 11:12 Central Time, the moon is almost completely within the shadow of the Earth, and so the only light that is shining on most of it is just all of the red light from all the sunrises and sunsets all around the world at that particular moment. But there's a tiny little sliver along the top that is not in the Earth's shadow. It's just in the fainter penumbral shadow, and that part will still be white. Depending on how sensitive your eyes are to color, the bright white might wash out some of the colors of the rest of it. So I like to use binoculars when I'm looking at a lunar eclipse, and if you can just point your binoculars so that the bright part is just out of the field of view and just focus on the rest of the moon, you'll probably be able to see the colors quite a bit nicer. Now we're going to have a color camera on a telescope here for our live stream, and we'll be able to show you the colors of the lunar eclipse very nicely. It is a slow, stately kind of affair, though. I mean, we're talking the moon rising at 20 after 8. The maximum eclipse is at 12 minutes after 11. And then the whole thing basically unwinds in reverse. Well, not exactly in reverse, but essentially it's a mirror image where the rest of the eclipse... Oh, as you can tell, we're near a road and the motorcycles are out. Now something that's kind of cool, and we'll see this on the video stream, is that look at the stars on the left side of the moon. The moon is actually moving as it goes around the Earth. It's moving through the Earth's shadow, but that means it's going and covering up stars. These are called occultations, but basically they're kind of like an eclipse. It's like the moon is eclipsing a star. It's just that the star is just a dot. So basically we'll be watching the eclipse, and minute by minute the stars will get closer to the edge of the moon, and then second by second it will just continue to, the moon will just continue close to them, and then it'll get right up to the edge, and then suddenly they will just like disappear and the star will be gone. We used to use that kind of stuff to actually measure the heights of mountains on the moon when we didn't have spacecraft that were there mapping it. Nowadays it's just kind of a neat thing to see, especially during a lunar eclipse, because normally when the moon is so bright it's hard to see stars, but during an eclipse like this we can see those stars much more easily. So there'll be a bunch of those to watch for as well. And actually there's one coming up here. James, take note of this, because there's like a bright double star that is heading towards the moon. We'll just see what this is. Oh yeah, good old HDS 3183 and whatever that is, Struve 2907. Anyway, it's a double star, and so there'll be these two stars right next to each other. I think we'll resolve them in the telescope that we're using, but regardless, as the moon comes out of the shadow, Unfortunately, it'll be up against the bright part of the moon, but we're going to watch for that because all those stars will get occulted by the moon. So there's always cool stuff like that going on. We just normally don't notice it except during an eclipse. So that'll be starting about 8:20. Again, the partial phase begins about 9:30. Maximum eclipse is 11:12, and then things sort of unwind until about 1 in the morning or so. We probably won't stay for the whole penumbral phase at the end. It's once the moon's out of the central part of the shadow, the drama has mostly been completed, but we'll see how it goes. It certainly is a beautiful night, and so I won't have to have too much excuse to stay out, I think. All right, so those are some of the events that are coming up. And let's see, we have a couple more things to do, including...
Cool space stuff!
Well, that was incredibly loud. Sorry about that. We out in the field here, you know, that's what's going on. I actually have to, there we go. So, China has been getting their moon program going. The Chang'e 7 spacecraft was supposed to launch last week, and this is the alleged moon race that's going on between China and the United States. It's not exactly a race, but both countries want to start landing spacecraft around the moon's south pole. That's the place to be because you can always see the Earth. There are craters that are shadowed that never see the light of the sun, and so they could have, well, they do have ice in them, which is a great resource if you're building a moon base. It gives you water, it gives you hydrogen, it gives you oxygen, all the things you need. And the problem is there's no rules on what you can do on the moon, really, and so if someone lands in a spot, you kind of can't land there. So China was going to be landing the Chang'e spacecraft, which is 4 separate spacecraft, an orbiter, a lander, and a rover, and another mini rover kind of thing. And it was exactly where the Americans are planning to land some of their spacecraft. All of a sudden, there was an announcement saying, oh, we won't be able to launch this year. It will be early 2027. They haven't said what happened. Like, they were literally on the launch pad ready to go, and the day before launch they announced that they wouldn't be going for another 3 or 4 months. Kind of a mystery, and you know, maybe there's some intrigue there. Maybe it's just the simple, you know, there's a problem with one of the spacecraft and they just don't want to talk about it. China tends to do their space program under wraps and then release the results after the fact. And so it's kind of too bad because there's some really great stuff going on there. This gives a big break to the American space program because they have all these plans, but really nothing ready to go. And so up until this point, most independent analysts were saying that, you know, the U.S. was definitely behind in this alleged race. But now things have evened up a little bit. Speaking of the American plan to get to the moon, Artemis 3 is now planned for June 2027. We knew it was in 2027. NASA has now set the date, month at least, for June, which is, depending on how you count it, like 8 or 9 months away. That's really soon. As a reminder, Artemis 3 is a mission just in Earth orbit. The Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System will go up into orbit, but it will dock with the prototype lander from Blue Origin, and it will dock with the prototype lander from SpaceX, neither of which have flown or, in fact, even exist. Like, we haven't seen anything other than computer animation of the Blue Origin lander for quite a while. So there's work being done, but we really don't know. And some of the people that really watch this closely, like Philip Sloss or Scott Manley, some of the YouTube commentators that really follow this stuff, doubt that anything's going to be ready unless there's just this big secretive push going on that nobody knows about and nobody wants to talk about, you know, how far they are for proprietary reasons. which is a difficult way to run a space program. I mean, the whole point of a space program is not really to go to the moon and get rocks and do science. I mean, that's part of it, but it's an inspirational program. You want to use it as a way of saying, look what we can do anything, we can achieve all these things. And if you're not bringing people along for the ride, a lot of that inspiration value, I think, gets lost. So hopefully they'll, once things are working a little bit better, maybe, they'll get a little bit more open with the programs. It's ironic, we were saying, China doesn't talk about their space program very much. Well, neither does the commercial companies working with NASA right now. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I fully expect this to get postponed, but we'll see. Hopefully not to be postponed is the Nancy Grace Roman Telescope. This is like a Hubble Space Telescope, next generation kind of thing. It's planned to launch Sunday. It is a spectacular piece of technology. It is going to revolutionize some of our ideas about the big questions of the universe, just like Hubble did. This will sort of take the next step. It's ironic that most people probably haven't heard about it until just this week, when one of the news commentators who was like filling in, thought it was named after Nancy Grace, who I guess is like some kind of reality TV star or something like that. I don't know, and they wondered why they named a telescope after her. It's actually named after Nancy Grace Roman, who basically was the godmother of the Hubble Space Telescope. It probably should have been named after her back then, but anyway, she's an amazing story. You want to look up Nancy Grace Roman and see a little bit about her life and her work, because it's really inspiring stuff. And regardless of what happens with Artemis 3, we know there's no Canadians on it, but a Canadian will be in space before then, launching September 12th, which seemed like miles away when they announced it back at the beginning of the year, but it's almost here. Josh Kutryk, Canadian astronaut, will be taking his first flight into space, a 6-month stay on the International Space Station. Not a bad trip, 6 months in space. And so they'll be up on the station. There's 4 of them flying. There's 2 Americans, a Russian, and Josh will be on the Crew 13 Dragon spacecraft, which will launch on the Falcon 9 rocket on Sunday. And they will basically replace 4 of the crew are going to be coming back shortly after that. And this rotation just keeps going. We've been doing this for 26 years now almost. There's been people living permanently on the station, just rotating through on 3 or 6 month trips. It is perhaps the final Canadian mission to the space station. The space station is due to be retired and deorbited in 2030, which is not all that far away. I mean, I guess they could squeeze in another mission, but Jenny Gibbons, the only Canadian astronaut that hasn't flown, has been working in the Artemis program, and so we kind of figure she's earmarked for our second Artemis flight sometime. And so it would probably have to be David St. Jacques, who already spent 6 months up on the space station. Jeremy Hansen has, of course, announced his retirement from the Canadian Space Agency. I mean, after you go to the moon, what's going to follow that, right? So we're going to be down to 3 active astronauts, and not a whole lot of potential for flights, because the flights to the moon will be very, very select and hard to get on. The International Space Station, because it was there for so long, we really had, most of our astronauts have flown, all of our astronauts pretty much have flown either the space shuttle or to the space station. In fact, Julie Payette was one of the first people to enter the space station back when it was only 2 little modules back in 1998. Josh is going to be launching on a 6-month mission, and the old NASA would have already given us a full flight plan, details on every single experiment he'll be doing, details on any spacewalks or things like that. The new NASA doesn't tell you anything. So we really don't know what Josh is going to be doing on his 6 months. I mean, we have some idea. He's done spacewalk training. He's done Canadarm training. He's done all of the training because everybody gets trained to do everything just in case, right? But we don't know if he's going to do spacewalks. We hope so. We don't know what science he's going to be doing or things like that. It's a little bit disappointing. Again, we want to be able to excite people. You know, when there's a Canadian on that dot that you can see going over the city. You know, the space station's really easy to see. You just need to know when to see it, and it's cool to think that, you know, somebody from our country's up there. And so, yeah, the space station, only a few more years. We'll do a retrospective on the space station at some point. It really is one of the biggest technological projects, international technological projects ever, and you know, people sometimes slag it because, oh, it's only 400 kilometers away, it's not really that exciting, and you know, but the amount of science and the amount of engineering, the amount of cool stuff that has come out of the space station is astounding. It's just not communicated very well to the general public. So we'll talk about that in a future episode. Okay, let me see. I want to get back to the chat, which is a little bit awkward for me to get to just because of the way things are working. But let's see who we got here. Oh, hey, Phil, nice to see you guys. It's been a while. I haven't chatted. How long after the satellite is in orbit will it take to see images captured? Oh, that is a question. Let's see, which one were we talking about back then? Sorry about that. Oh, the NGR satellites. I'm not sure quite what the context is there, Phil. Sorry. If you want to jump in the chat and just give me a little bit more, I'll get to that. Oh, Paul mentions that Jeremy Hansen's a speaker at the Star Muse International Festival. That's like a big space festival in like an island in the middle of the Atlantic. You know, Brian May from Queen is one of the people that's involved in that. Like, it's a big thing. I know, Paul, you've been to that a couple times, hey? There's astronauts and all sorts of stuff like that. It'd be nice to go to that for sure. One day. Okay, yeah, let me, I'll wait for Phil to get in. Oh, Pamela. Oh my gosh. Geez, we haven't seen you for a long time. Thanks for dropping by. Great to see you. We're going to be watching the lunar eclipse in about just a little bit over half an hour. And so, yeah, we'll be here all night with you. That's great. Val compares the Star Muse Festival to Space Woodstock. You know what? That is the perfect comparison. That's absolutely right. I would love to go there. It's a big plane flight. So, okay. You know what? I was not connecting, Phil, the NGR satellite. For some reason, that sounded like NPR, like National Public Radio, in my head, and I couldn't get off of that. How long will it take until we see stuff from the Nancy Grace Roman satellite? Several weeks at the very least, and then it'll just be engineering pictures of, like, look, we pointed at the star that we wanted to and took a picture of it, so we know that the pointing system works and things like that. It takes a long time to commission a telescope once it gets out into space. It has to reach ambient temperature, and they have to figure out the proper positions for shielding it from the sun and all that kind of stuff, and some of that just happens after launch. So it'll probably be several weeks, I think, before we get images, but once they start, it's going to be like drinking from the fire hose, because that thing produces so much data that it is literally impossible for humans to digest it all. So there's all sorts of computerized data collection and processing. There's AI involved in pattern recognition, not AI like ChatGPT, but actual AI where it's machine learning. They've trained a machine how to, classify galaxies based on shape, and so that kind of stuff will happen. So yeah, it's going to be one of those things that's impossible to keep up with. Even the James Webb Space Telescope, there's so much coming out of that. I've stopped doing updates from the Webb telescope because literally there's just too much to even talk about. It needs a whole show of its own. Hey, there's an idea. Hey, James, we need to do a James and Webb uh, podcast that we talk just about all the James Webb discoveries. Planting the seed for James while he's getting the telescope set up. Okay, let's see. We looks like we got to all the questions. Thanks everybody for dropping in. And remember, the sky. It's one of those things. You know, when you look at the sky, you look at the stars, you realize you're part of this bigger system. For me, it helps. You know, the daily doom scroll kind of stuff fade away into the background a little bit. You realize you get a perspective that is like much broader. And you know, whenever all the astronauts, when they come back, they say, "Oh my gosh, we have to send every politician in the world into space." I mean, okay, some people would like to send them into space and not bring them back, but I think they mean send them into space so they get that perspective and then bring them back. And it would affect the way that they do their jobs. So that's one of the great things that space has. It has that ability to inspire and make us think about the best things we can do. And whether that's, you know, watching space missions go on, or looking at the sky yourself, or using binoculars, or taking pictures of the sky, or just thinking about the possibilities out there. The universe has room for everybody. It's a great hobby. And thank you all for coming along on this ride. We are now going to shut things down. I'm going to go get our telescope ready. We'll be back probably 8:15 because I'd like to catch the moonrise if we can at 8:20. So grab yourself a warm beverage. Get outside under the real sky if you can. And we'll be back with you for our live stream of the eclipse in just a little while. Thanks everybody for coming to the show. Thanks to everybody that sent all of their wonderful images in and things like that. And we will see you next month with another edition of Dome at Home. Good night everybody. Have a good one, or we'll see you in a little bit. Oh, wait. Sorry, I just see that there are suddenly more questions. Scott, do you know what the bright satellites are? Oh, you know what? That's a really good question, Kim. So when we were out shooting the Perseids, there were a bunch of satellites that you couldn't see them until they suddenly appeared for a few seconds, became very bright, and then disappeared. I think that there's Starlinks that are in their main orbits, like they're far enough away that they're not visible most of the time, but they've got a big solar panel, and so as they move around, they just get a glint of sun, and we just see what's called a flare. The Iridium satellites used to do this all the time, and it was actually predictable. So you could say, oh, there's going to be a flare at this exact second, and you looked really cool when you would point up to the sky and predict something to happen. But these ones, we don't have enough information about the pointing of the Starlink satellites. I don't know if anybody does, actually. And so I think the flaring is coming from that. That seems to be common wisdom on the satellite groups. It could also just be other satellites as well, but there does seem to be a really big increase in the last little while of these bright flaring satellites. And yeah, they get like, I saw one that went to probably magnitude -1 or -2, like brighter than any of the stars. So it's not a minor kind of thing. So we'll have to look into that. But I'm guessing, I mean, just the sheer weight of statistics, most of the satellites up there are Starlink satellites, and so they're the most likely culprit. All right, I'm glad I caught that question for the end. Dome at Home for Life. Oh, that's sweet. I hope you guys are doing well out there in Steinbach. I still have that camera that I was going to lend you guys. Anyway, let's hook up later, Phil, and we'll get you guys together. All right, we will see you soon. Have a good evening, and we'll be back with the lunar eclipse in about 25 minutes. Good night, everyone.